Theo, a
Thank
few
you.
days ago, I had the pleasure to talk to a few team members of yours.
All right.
I wanted to understand you as a leader, and I tell you what they told about you.
Only
They-
if it's good things, please.
Well, they are. They are. Theo drives change. They said you constantly drive and push a number of initiatives and the teams. Theo transforms. The way you lead transforms people's way of thinking and the business accordingly. Theo is a human-centric, impactful leader. You help people and teams to push their boundaries and the boundaries of the business at the same time. So what I get here is that they say we deliver as a team and we can deliver because we matter. I was wondering, what do you think about these words? How do you feel about them?
I mean, first of all, I'm flattered and I feel very good. Give me the names. I'm going to make sure they get a pay rise. I'm kidding. But apart from joking, no, seriously, this is very touching for me. And I'm very honored to be hearing these words from my people. I do feel in a way that reflects my management style, because it is all about people, how we can put the people in the center, right? If these people are customers, if these people are employees, or if these people are just associates and team members. Coming back to my team, it is very touching also in a way that it is important to understand that your actions can have impact on people's life. And I mean, we have all been there, right? We are all have been managed by different leaders. But to me, the most important is like the footprint that you leave. And that's my legacy, which apparently fuels me to continue doing what I'm already doing. And I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by extremely good professionals and personalities, which is equally important to me.
What is interesting is that quite many people think that, well, you know, I'm a natural-born leader. But the thing is that...
And I'm always right.
And you are always right, exactly. But it's your past experiences that make you the person or the leader or the professional you are today. And I do know that you have worked very hard to become the person and the colleague you are today. And I was wondering if you could explain a bit more, like, what was it behind, what is behind the CEO you are today? Because you have worked hard, you've been coached, you've been supported by very talented people. Tell me about it.
Well, I think it's a plethora of different things, right? As you rightly said, our past experiences are shaping us on the way we are as leaders. How do we serve the people we are working with? I was fortunate enough in my professional life to be surrounded, being mentored by extremely good leaders, but equally, I was fortunate enough, and I will explain you why I use this word intentionally, to be also surrounded by bad leaders as well. So from the good leaders, and I do feel that a big part, let's say, of my management and leadership style is based on the good experiences I had with leaders that they have left their footprint in my professional career. For example, I can recall, there were many along the way because I have worked in different big corporations and so on, but I can always remember one I had a few years back when I was working for Booking.com in Amsterdam. She has really left a mark, a positive mark on me. So my leadership style today is based on her leadership style. And it's a funny story here. I met her like 2 years ago, I think. I was in Amsterdam for some business, and we had lunch together. And I was telling her, actually, what I'm telling you now, that, you know, you have really helped me to shape my leadership style the way it is today. And luckily, it seems that it's highly appreciated from the teams I manage. And I'm not sure that she was aware about it. I think in a way she was a bit surprised. So it's always very important. This was many years ago, right? It's been more than 10 years that I was working with her. So good leaders can shape you, can help you find your leadership style, right? I'm not really in favor of just copying paste the leadership style, because if this is not in line with your values, your belief system, your experiences, I'm not sure if it's going to work, right? Coming back to the bad leaders, I will also share a personal story with you. I'm not going to say when, so in the past, I was also fortunate enough to have a very bad manager. Bad in a way that the attitude, the management style, not standing up for the people, throwing people under the bus, and things that we see in the corporate world, right? But I'm so thankful to her, because she has helped me to reach a point, to have a breakthrough and say, you know, these are my values, you're violating my values, I'm going to fight this because this clashes a lot with my values, and I'm going to move on. So without her knowing, she has really, really helped me and boosted my career. Because the moment I realized what was very and truly important to me, everything became non-negotiable. So, just to sum it up, good leaders help you to shape your management, your leadership style. Equally, bad leaders help you to be aware of what you shouldn't be doing.
I love the fact that you launched the concept of non-negotiables, because we are going to talk about it later.
Are we? Nice.
Yes, we are.
But if you allow me just to add something, it is never, and it's never puppies and unicorns all the time. You really have to put a lot of hard work on what you are doing. You have to be passionate. You need to have a genuine interest for people, and you need a lot to work with yourself in order to be able to serve others. I see myself as a leader who is serving my people, that sees them growing professionally, and this is something that gives me joy and satisfaction.
What I hear about your leadership style is that you don't make a distinction between hard and soft stuff. Actually, I've always had serious issues with this distinction.
Does it really help us?
No, it doesn't. And it doesn't
Does
help.
it serve the business?
Yeah.
Not really.
Because it doesn't help. Because if you think that people are soft and everything else is hard, obviously it leads you to think that, well, you know, I don't want to be dealing with the soft issues. I just want to deal with hard issues. So what I hear from you, that instead of applying this hard and soft distinction, you have 3 types of skills you nurture as a leader. One is human skills, because you said that you do believe in human-centric leadership.
Which is the number one
That's
skill,
the number one.
at least in my view.
Then you do have technical skills, function-specific skills. And of course, in order to be able to apply your skills for the benefit of an organization, you need kind of industry-related knowledge, right?
The last 2 skills you can always develop.
Exactly.
Right? The first one, it's more fundamental.
And normally it goes another way around, is that, well, you know, do they have technical skills? Do they have industry knowledge? And, well, human skills, it's not that important because they consider it as soft. Why do we still use this distinction, even though, just speaking it like this, you understand it doesn't make any sense whatsoever?
May I reverse the question to you? Do you think very successful enterprises around the globe that are using this distinction?
Not many. Not many. Actually, I can mention one, and it kind of it bugs me that everybody is using the same reference, but it's Netflix. They have built their culture around human performance, and everything else follows. If your head is in the right space you do have all the human skills. You have an open mindset. You are not selfish. You are having a collective mindset. They say that, well, everything else you can learn it.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that statement. And let's try to put things in a perspective here. If we take legacy organizations, right, the enterprises, the corporations as we know them or we used to know them, let's say maybe before the COVID period, it was mostly about performance, numbers, the balance sheets, and moving the business forward. Fine. I mean, you need to keep your shareholders happy. You need to have results. You are running the business in order to be profitable. But if we see a shift that has been made over the last years, many companies that they understood in order to be viable, they had to invest in their people. How? By creating or building step by step the proper right culture that reflects their values, their beliefs, and their experiences as an organization, as a whole. So coming to your point, we shouldn't be doing this distinction between soft and hard. Yes, as companies, we do have the tendency to look balance sheets and say like, okay, we're on the right track, maybe we're not on the right track, but we disregard to pay attention to the culture that is shaping a work environment that is inclusive, it should be inclusive, a work environment that people bring their authentic self, that they innovate, because if you are in an environment that you are valued and deeply appreciated, you always are making the extra mile. You will always be an out-of-the-box thinker. And you will give more on what is expected from you. And this is something I truly believe that lots of companies are missing the point. They are too focused on the performance of financial results, which, again, it has to be there, but you need to keep a balance, right? Disregarding or not paying attention to the culture or to creating a proper culture, it's going to cost you in the long run. And we do have examples from companies that they have been very, very successful, but along the years, they weren't anymore.
What we've been talking about is actually culture, and we do know that the leadership is the key element in building culture, and there are different ways to build it, but there are also different elements that help leaders to nurture culture and shape culture. This is not a question whether what's right or wrong, because there are just as many culture descriptions as there are people who are describing it. But I would like to hear from you, like, how do you describe culture? What does it mean for you?
My definition, and based on my past experiences, culture is a set of values, beliefs, and collective mindset. If you manage to bring these three elements together, then I do believe you can create the environment that you can thrive, your business can thrive. Why? Because then you have people that they are loyal to you, you have employees that they will be always, or most of the times, let's put it like this, reward you with their hard work and the loyalty. They will always do more than it is expected. So at the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, what do you really want what do you really want to succeed by creating the right culture? The right culture for you and for the organization you are running, right?
I love the fact that you emphasized the intangible aspect of culture. You said beliefs, which, by the way, are internal. They are inside our head. We also have...
Or sometimes in our heart.
In heart, yes.
And there is research, at least in coaching, I can tell you, that 80% of our beliefs are not ours.
Exactly.
They are from the environment. We have inherited these beliefs.
Even more important, we are working on an autopilot. most of the beliefs are almost like underlying assumptions that we are not aware of them. They just like drive us to a certain direction. They
No,
make
we're not
us to
aware
behave.
because it's normality
Exactly.
for us.
And also, what I would like to add here is that, well, what's inside our head drives our behaviors. And if we talk about the organizational values, of course, you need some guidelines to communicate to people what kind of behaviors do you expect from them, and you need to derive them from the beliefs and the values, right? Do you agree?
Yes and no. I beg to differ a bit here.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer of, people being themselves and bring their authentic self, in a business setup, in a business environment. I think this is something that companies should do during the hiring process to try and understand, what might be the real values and the core values of a potential employee to join their organization. However, if we are not aware about the real values, what the real values are, and what might be the limiting beliefs that we have as individuals in order to make sure that we live up to these values, then I think things are somehow not doomed to fail, because that's a quite strong statement, but in the long run, I'm not convinced, that this will give long-term benefits.
Sometimes I think it's really useful to think culture in a family context. And
What do you mean? That's an interesting point.
I mean that those who have kids, they are setting boundaries for children at home, right? And they say that, well, this is how I want my son, my daughter to behave. So they are basically telling what are the non-negotiables for the kids. And I think culture in the corporation or organizational context is pretty similar, because as a leader, you should not only communicate what you value, but I do believe that there is also a sort of a responsibility to translate these values into behaviors, because the values are supposed to drive day-to-day operations, decision-making, and behaviors.
You said many things.
Yeah.
So let me start from what you said at the beginning. Let's first make sure that in companies or as leaders, we do not treat our employees as kids.
Yeah.
Because that's problematic itself,
Yeah.
right? And let's not, and this might be quite unpleasant to some people that might hear me, but let's not call our workspaces as families. No, we are not a family,
Good.
right? We are professionals, we are mature people, that we bring our expertise, our best selves, in order to align ourselves to a bigger and a higher purpose. So I'm quite against this family that the companies are usually creating. So, number one, we shouldn't be treating employees as kids because they are not kids. The fact that you said or you defined a set of values, and someone, of course, needs to align with these values, because if you are not aligned with these values, really and truly, you will not go that far. Yeah? So another, a huge mistake, and I'm sorry, I'm taking the discussion a bit further here, that we as leaders, many of the times do, is that we are trying to please people. But in my views, a real leader is not there to please people. Not at all. And actually, I have a bit of a different opinion here from the majority. Basically, if you're trying to please someone and you are just feeding that person with, excuse my language, beep, BS, in order to make that person feel good, and it's actually a way for yourself, not to feel that, discomfort of being very brutally honest to someone. So that's also something in relation to what you said, how you safeguard that these values will be actually embedded in an organization's DNA, right? You spoke about accountability. You have to own it. Many times, we're making that mistake, that culture comes from the top down. It's wrong, in my views. Everyone needs to own the culture because that's a collective effort, If you come and tell me, let's say from the top, you will do 1, 2, 3, most likely, and as a personality, I'm not gonna do it, But if you cultivate a space where I feel I'm valued, where different opinions are appreciated, where I can be authentic, where I can express myself, when I can disagree, when I can fail and still be okay, then you're creating that space where everyone most likely will take the extra mile.
I think it's also really interesting that we quite often talk about culture in positive terms, just like you did. So when we do this and when we do that, then people are free to express their opinions, and the diversity of opinions is a good thing. I think it would be quite interesting to turn it another way around and think or talk about how does it feel, how does it affect your day-to-day work if the culture is not what it's supposed to be, when it's not helping the company to reach its objectives. So, for instance, when we talk about the interactions, you talked about earlier already almost like bullying, like backstabbing, all those kinds of behaviors which are demotivating people. They are very bad for the moral. There is a lot of those behaviors happening within the organization. And I think there are quite many people who understand that, well, if you behave in a way that makes people feel small, you probably are not getting the best human resources out of them.
And that means that you are smaller yourself.
Exactly.
Or a very insecure person.
If you think about decision making, I think the first part of the decision making is what kind of questions are we asking? Because even the questions can be biased. And then as a result, what kind of questions you are asking, you are creating solutions. And I think culture, when it's bad, it's not open to new ideas. It's like, oh, well, we can't do it. Well, we can do it if we change it in a way that it is exactly what we've been doing before. And then there is a question like, okay, we decide a course of action A is the best way to move forward, and then we need to implement it. And there is a total lack of sense of urgency. And nothing moves on.
I mean, that's
a huge.
That's a huge.
But I think that is the core, because if you see a behavioral problem, that is a cultural problem, and you need to unlearn those limiting beliefs, by the way, which translate into limiting behaviors, and then
Correct.
You need to learn new behaviors. And I think
you need to replace them.
You need to replace. Yeah. And I think here your coaching experience actually is extremely valuable.
Yes. Coaching has saved my life in many, in many ways.
But to put it short, culture is, if you manage culture, it's a question of unlearning and learning new. And if you want to manage culture and help people to own the culture, you need to help them to embrace the unlearning and learning process. So I was wondering how you do that as a leader.
You open so many things that...
Yeah.
Let me start from what you said just now. Let's take an organization, right? Whatever organization. That you are in a leadership position, you take a business decision, you move forward, and all of a sudden, along the way, you realize that, you know what, this might not work. What do you think most of the people in a leadership position will do? You make that realization, along the way that this might be a wrong decision,
Well, I see a few courses of action. you don't admit that that was a sort of a mistake. You keep on going, and the disaster, you can see it coming, but you don't care because
Why?
you don't want to be wrong.
Yes.
That is one thing. Another thing, there probably are some leaders who actually believe that you don't even know the exact outcome where you're heading. The movement is more important, and the learning while you are moving is defining the final outcome. Because I do know that there are some leaders who say that I use strategy as a tool to create movement, as opposed to I use strategy in order to reach something or create something in 4 years' time, and I knew 4 years ago exactly what it will be.
No, it will not be,
Yeah,
because there are
yeah,
always unexpected conditions. And we have recent
Yeah.
examples about that, of what has happened with COVID, the whole economic crisis across the globe, the emerging technologies, artificial intelligence. The landscape is changing rapidly.
But you have the answer to the question, and I think mine was not the correct one.
No, it's not about being correct or wrong, but let's first start. How are we leading by example? And I ask this question because usually, this is in our human nature, right? Right? We always are ashamed to admit a mistake. You know, usually when we do a mistake, we're like, "Oh, damn it! How am I going to let me cover it?" But if you are very transparent, if you are leading by example and say, "Listen, I'm sorry. This has been a wrong decision," I think it's smarter to change route or a decision that it doesn't serve you. It's going to cost you less in the long run. I had in my career cases that I had to rethink, to change decisions, and this is absolutely fine because the environment is changing around you. Yeah, that's number one. So in companies, usually we are reluctant to say, "Listen, my bad." It can happen. And here comes the culture, how error tolerant the culture in the organization is. Yeah? The second point, based to your question, is how you own it. Yeah? How you can stand up in front of a group of people, your associates, your board or whatsoever, and say, this is my mistake, and this is how I'm going to fix it. That's also cultural. There are cultures, or there are companies that they are zero tolerant to mistakes, that the moment you are making a mistake, you are just out. And there are companies that they see it as a developmental point. What have you learned from it? And how are you going to make sure that you're going to do it better the next time? There is also a third point here. What is your framework? In order to lead, you need to have a specific framework. My framework, the one at least I'm using, is where I am today, here. Where do I want to go? There. Why I want to go there. So the moment these three questions, I have clarity on these three questions, then for some reason, everything aligns in order the people around you, your peers, your associates, everything aligns in a shared and common purpose. Is that culture? Yes, it is.
But that is people emotionally owning the problem and committing to the journey. Because at the end of the day, if you know where you are and you know what problems are holding you back, and then your plan is to get rid of the problems, and then you need to generate solutions, and then you need to decide at that point, based on the best information, the best solution, and you start moving into that direction. And if you have been able to create an emotional relationship between the people and the problems, you have created a movement.
Usually what I say to my people, you always have in your mind that bio principle, behavior, impact, output. So you always need to be aware how your behavior will impact others and how the outcome, what the outcome would that be, right? Again, it has always to do with your past experiences, with the information you have, like you rightly said, at that specific time, once you're taking decision and so on. But I think it comes down to how much you value people, yeah? If you put people first, not in words, but in your actions, because that's equally, actually, not equally, even more important. And once you have created that framework, that you know where you are, you know where exactly you want to go and why you want to go there, then you're able also to show the way to others. And this is leadership for me. For me, a good leader is to take their people to the places that haven't been, to show them how they can take there, to show them alternatives, to generate solutions, to add value, to bring value to the table.
I'm going back to the learn topic because I think it's quite important.
Can I add another word?
Yes, you can.
Which I recently, I brought a team coach and we had with all my teams today's session, and she was saying something very nice. Learn, unlearn, relearn. So I would like to add the relearn because that shows, a sense of purpose that you have to put effort in order to get there, if you just allow me.
That's a really good point. What is the role of role modeling in that process? Because I'm still like, what I'm in my head, if you should kind of summarize or simplify what culture change looks like. And I'm still trying to understand, and because I know that you have a coaching experience, you are a professional coach, that how do you help people to understand the benefit of changing the behaviors, and whether it's a role of the leader to support them in their personal journeys?
Wow. I think first we need to ask a very fundamental question. If we are doing the right things or if we are doing the things right. Because these are two different, completely different things. When it comes to a cultural shift, which apparently will result to a changed behavior, we really, really need to understand something very, very fundamental in this particular case. That people, we as humans, are wired in a way that we need our comfort. This is what keeps us, steady, right? Yeah. It's our comfort zone. We are wired in a way that we are reluctant to changes. I mean, we all want it, right? I bet you, if you go in an organization, and you have like 500 people, and ask them, guys, who wants to change the culture? You're going to see 500 hands, right? Pointing like, yes. If you ask the question, how willing are you to commit in order, on a personal level, and to own it, this is where ownership comes, in order to change that culture, you will see these hands, dropping. If you ask a third question and make it even more specific and ask an individual, what is it exactly you can commit? What might be the 3 things you can commit in order to change the culture? You will see even less hands. So why am I saying this? I'm saying that because we need to appreciate that people, in a workspace, we all formulate an identity, right? If we are living up to this identity, or if this identity defines us as individuals, is a different story. But we are creating a certain identity about our job, about our environment, etc. Once you have to give up something, in order to gain something else, you have to see first deep inside yourself. What am I ready to give up in order, to take the next step? And if this is not very clear on your end as an individual, I'm afraid that change won't be that possible. And this is something because you mentioned coaching. I mean, I'm coaching some very high-profile people in the C-level. And many times, the difficulty that these people have is to try and understand their pitfalls. Try to really be unbiased and maybe unlearn some beliefs they have formulated over the years in order to be able to see the full picture. Once you manage to do that, then sky is the limit. And I do mean it. And that applies to the culture as well. We have to also appreciate into that there is an element of grief as well. Once you let something go, there is that element of grief deep inside.
Because you let go of your identity,
exactly.
Right?
And not to forget that some people, especially in senior positions, the position defines them, not that they define the position they are holding. So, we have to, first of all, to be very open to embrace a self-reflection. By doing that, then we are also able, as leaders, to cultivate trust and safety in the workspace, so other people, can really reflect on their own values, on their own capabilities, on what is possible and what is not possible, and how can I bridge the gap. And then you will start making small steps in order to build a better, more steady, and more inclusive culture. Whoever comes and tells that, I'm going to change the culture in these 90 days or nothing against consultants, right? But usually from, consultants, you might hear that, we have the perfect plan. In 1 year time, you will be an entire different organization.
People are unpredictable.
I'm not sure if people are unpredictable. People are predictable in a way that, if you give them everything that they need in order to take the next step, right? But coming back to the culture, you have to be aware that, you need to make tiny steps, but you're making steps.
I think that is pretty profound what you say there. First of all, now you answered the question, what does it take to change a behavior? You have to let go.
Hard work. Hard work, self-reflection. Yeah. And I'm saying this regardless value. I'm saying this as a professional coach. You really need to work hard in order to be able, to self-reflect. And let me share a personal example. In the early stages of my career, I was not responding. I was reacting on the situations. Of course, after years of working with different mentors, different leaders, and so on, that, as we said before, they have really shaped me to the leader I am today. At a certain point, I really understood that I was my worst enemy. I was holding myself back. I was. It's true. But this came after hard work, after being able, to change the lenses you're having and, replace them with new lenses and try to go deeper and deeper and understand, what the real issue is here,
Did you think at that point, did you have a clear goal in your head once you were going through that process where you were looking hard inside in order to understand what holds you back and to replace that with something which moves you forward?
So if I had a clear goal, no, not at that time. The goal became clear along the way. And the goal became clear, I think I said it before, when I realized what my true values are, what really drives my decision-making process, what really drives me as an individual, then everything became non-negotiable.
Okay, let's see whether I managed to summarize what you said. So you say that if we talk about culture change, it is hard because ultimately behaving differently means thinking differently and believing differently and seeing things differently, which is a change of identity.
It is.
And not everybody is willing to change it just as a basic concept. I'm fine as it is, so why should I bother?
But I want the change.
Well, not everybody even want the change. So there is a question like, okay, so how do you instill that willingness to go through that process into, let's say, 5,000 people? Because at the end of the day, culture change requires everybody's commitment.
Absolutely.
And no, I mean that
so.
it's a utopia that if you have 5,000 people, everybody would embrace it wholeheartedly. But you need, like, first you need a tipping point, something like 15% of people who embrace it, and then, like, more and more people start behaving differently because they think differently. But what I'm really like, I think it's quite profound what you say, because indirectly you say that culture change is not for everybody, and sometimes you need to let people go.
No, I wouldn't say that. I beg to differ, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat the message because, I mean, you know me quite well.
Yeah.
I never sugarcoat the message. I do think that cultural changes or adjustments, let's say, in the culture are for everyone, as soon as that everyone is willing to sacrifice something. And I use intentionally the word sacrifice because always, if you want to gain something, you have to give something. That's how it works. Is it your time? Is it, you name it. But you cannot expect to have a result without trying.
And the sacrifice. Sacrifice. And the sacrifice could be a loss of status momentarily. You lose your teammates. You all of a sudden you maybe don't even have the skills for the new position. So at the end of the day, sacrifice and being totally afraid, they go hand in hand. So it's not just like, I need to accept the idea of sacrifice, but I need to be willing to deal with my fears.
Yeah, and to embrace it.
Yeah.
I mean, no pain, no gain, right? Even
Yeah.
though I'm not a very athletic person, but this is what we will hear from someone who is training hard, And that's the same principle, right? You don't expect to have a different outcome if you don't do something differently, or even more so if you don't try. And if you allow me to make another point here, which comes to what I said before about how error tolerant or failure tolerant an organization is. Because we always want to show up, as super professionals, as, we are the best. Even on LinkedIn, what we are posting is all about our successes, not about our pitfalls and our difficult times. But if you don't embrace the failure, you will never innovate. So there is no innovation without failure. Failure is a prerequisite innovation. And I'm saying this because this comes hand in hand with the culture. If you cultivate that culture of openness, that the opinions are valued, that there are not so many silos, or there are not silos at all, you have an open mind, and you don't have, as a leader, a set of people only around you without really understanding what's going on, in the entire organization, even more so outside the organization, especially when it comes to customers, then structurally you have a problem there. and you are heading towards the wrong culture.
We talked about this before, but
Makes sense?
it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. But I think that there is one thing I would talk about a little bit more. And I give you an example. I used to be a national team level athlete. And of course, I operated from goal to goal to goal. And in that sense, it was a finite game. There were the championships and another championships. And work is not exactly like that. Despite you have your quarterly goals, but the work goes forever. So that is one thing. But in order to perform well, you need to have a system in place. I mean that you need to have you need to control your head. You need to behave in a certain way. You need to wake up and you need to train and whatnot. And of course, you need to have a good support system. What helped me to make those sacrifices, because sacrifices I did in order to perform and in order to win, was that I loved the idea of the gold medal. I loved the idea of winning. But of course, actually the gold medal was sort of an idea how an amazing performance looks like. And I think they went hand in hand.
That was a factory belief.
They went hand in hand, but I had an identity. I knew that, now it matters, and I wanted to be at my best, and I was just obsessed with that idea. And that motivated me. And I think, in the corporate context, knowing that, people are tired. It's quite stressful environment. You have to do more with less all the time. So I think the question of finding the motivation to make those sacrifices is one of the key questions if you really want to take people along with your journey and you want to make the journey differently than what it has been done before. I'm thinking, what are your thoughts on how to instill that motivation? Because you can only motivate people to be motivated.
Easy.
But it's up to everybody.
Easy. It's very easy. In my views, you always have to show what's in it for me as an individual, right? If you're coming and you're asking me, you set me a set of guidelines, a set of values, a set of whatever, but you tell me you will do 1, 2, 3. I mean, ultimately, I will do it, yeah, because it's my job to do it. But will I do it in a passionate way? Will I be sharing, a common goal, a common target with the entire organization? Am I part of this? Most likely not. So what I'm trying to say is that people need to understand the benefit. What might be the end benefit? So if I change that, what am I going to gain in a personal level? And I've been in discussions, that we might think that, it's your job to change. It doesn't really work like that, especially in big organizations, right? Once you have to manage thousands of employees. I need to understand what is the end benefit for me as an individual. Might be a better work environment with no toxic behaviors around me. It's still a win, right? Might be that I'm going to do my job in a more efficient way, in a linear way that is going to free up time and I'm going to focus more on meaningful things. Still, it's a win. The win is not always financial, Let's keep that in mind. I mean, of course, people being compensated in a proper way, which is reflecting their skill set and their efforts, is extremely important, don't get me wrong. But it's not always what drives us in our workplaces. What drives us is the sense of a purpose, that we are sharing something, we are building something new here. And then the companies need to ask this question to themselves, or the management teams, the leadership teams, and so on. What kind of workforce do I want? Do I want people to be loyal? Do I want people to come up with brilliant ideas? Do I want people, to show up the way they are and bring their innovation and create something meaningful? Or do I want people, that they just execute and they bring the results?
I know that you have a slightly unconventional view on what comes first, chicken egg thingy. Culture or strategy? And I know that you have said that, well, culture is something that precedes the strategy. And then if you think about how the kind of a management consulting jargon goes, it's like, you define your strategy, you align the values to the strategy, and that's it. Tick the box.
Can I be provocative here?
You can.
Well, I think that, culture is the strategy, for breakfast. Strategy can be as sexy as you can imagine, with amazing PowerPoints, with brilliant plans, where we're going to be in 5, 10, 15 years, whatsoever. But if you don't take the culture into consideration, not to take into consideration, to start with the culture, it's doomed to fail. Who is going to execute that strategy if it's not the right culture in place? It's math. I mean, 1 + 1 equals 2, right? So how do you expect me to execute the strategy if I don't have the right culture in order to be able, first of all, to embrace, understand, and align myself towards this direction? And this is a common mistake I see in many companies. Let's put it like this, We have with the huge plans about the strategy, and we're going to do this and that, which is fine. We need to have the end goal in mind, don't get me wrong. But it's equally or even more important, I would say, to have the right culture in place, because the right culture will boost your strategy, not the other way around. The strategy will not create a culture.
I think it's interesting because I talked about competing, because you have these finite goals, which is a championship, which is basically your strategy, and then you have infinite game, which is basically your culture. Anyway,
that comes your sports background, right?
Yeah, it comes I can't help myself. However, I do believe that the culture doesn't exist for the sake of culture. It helps us to do amazing things that excite us, that make us happy, that make us proud, that help us serve the customers better. And I think it would be really interesting to hear what you have done at Bank of Valletta, which has changed the way people experience the bank internally, but also externally as a customer. And I know that your leadership team is fully behind your plans, so the role modeling aspect plays a huge role here.
I think that at BOV we have a quite open culture, and we embrace changes. And this is what has happened over the last years, right? We have created new digital solutions in order to assist our employees and our customers, because that's equally important, right? To start from the inside by giving a more functional, better intranet, simplifying processes, the systems that our employees are using, which ultimately will reflect to the end customer. I think we have done some really cool stuff. The first that comes in mind was 3 years ago. Actually, it was a few months when I first came. That I want to create a community within the bank, which we have created, and we call them Gen BOV, which is like Generation BOV. So it is a community of colleagues from different departments. Everyone voluntarily can join this community, where we use them and we ask them to give us feedback on the products we are designing, on the content we are writing, on how easy and how user-friendly what we are building is to the end customer. So we try to make the employees part of the process, not the people that they will come, just to test it and give us feedback. So from day one, once we start the discovery phase, we always involve them. Not because we want to be nice to our people, of course we want to be nice to our people, but it's because, they bring lots of value. So that sense of community, I think, has proved to be very, very successful, because it creates sort of a new collective mindset, if I can say that. Another example that comes to mind, which is very, very recent, we have celebrated for the third year in a row the CX Week. So it is a global initiative, and we are participating since the last 3 years. My team and the people who have worked with my team to bring this to life, they have done an exceptional job. I mean, they went beyond my expectations, and these people have worked tirelessly day and night. So this year, I think we have done some amazing things, a CX conference for all our employees, some events to celebrate and to show appreciation to the customers that they are giving us feedback. Internal activities like CX quiz for with nice prizes about our employees, how we can infuse, how we can embody this culture of customer centricity. And it's not only my team that aligned with that, right? You have seen how other teams within the bank has helped us in order to bring this to life, because that requires a lot of coordination. Bringing 200 people from the entire bank to the frontline experience, going customer service, answering phone calls, trying to assist customers, going to business centers, going to the branches, to corporate centers, in order to serve customers. It creates, or at least in my views, creates a culture that says, hey, I'm not the wise man sitting behind my desk giving orders and you're going to do X, Y, Z. It means like, hey guys, let's do this all together. You're valued, give me your feedback, and we together, we're going to shape something new or something maybe more meaningful. And this is not really based on my assumption. This is also based on data that we receive when it comes to the satisfaction of these initiatives, how they have been perceived, not only from us as employees, but also from customers. Besides all the cool stuff, with the new website, a new intranet, some really cool digital solutions, it's also how can we shape, in a way, the future of the bank. And when I say shape, I mean in a way that our customers will feel more valued, our employees will be even more engaged. We are very lucky, I have to admit here, because culturally wise, I think we are standing in a very, very good place as a bank. And our employees are extremely open to try these things. So, for example, the Customer Experience Week, when 3 years ago I introduced it and I said, like, let's do it, People were excited. The second year were even more excited. This year we're super excited because I think we literally took it to a brand new level. But this is not one-man show. This is hard work. And this required for people to do the extra mile. And they did. And I'm not only referring to my teams, to the teams I manage directly. That required a lot of teams from the entire organization. Top to bottom, bottom-up approach.
Let's go back to the very beginning. When I told about me talking to your team members, and I tried to summarize what they said. They said, we deliver because we matter. So there is an element of human leadership, human-centered leadership being in the core, and then understanding that the technical and industry skills, they are surrounding the human skills. And there are quite many people who probably think that, well, this is not the way I lead today. I lead through numbers, I lead through processes. I'm almost thinking that, well, organization, we could call it a mechanization.
Then you don't lead, you bleed, actually.
That is almost funny. But I think, there are limits, how long can you go on that road where you're just focusing on efficiencies and not so much thinking about that people could also elevate the business. So my question to you is, if the future is all about human-centered leadership, can anybody make the change? The shift from the old-fashioned style to the new one?
I think many companies are doing it successfully. Those that they put a lot of effort, a lot of resources, and it is an investment to invest in that front, absolutely. So, again, let's try to see globally the most successful companies. They're doing it. The majority of them. Yeah?
Yeah.
So certainly I don't think the old school model, by being bossy, by giving orders to people, by micromanaging people, by there are so many things in the old school model. I don't think it's very applicable today. Or there are, of course, companies that still apply this, but their longevity, I think, is at risk. Is at risk there. Something that we forget, and I'm including myself, as part of a corporate organization. I'm not referring here to BOV, but generally, that what we forget is that we don't only choose people. People choose us as well. People choose to work for us as well. So you need to start from that, right? It has to be a win-win situation. In the old times, it was like the conditions they have been different. So you were dependent, let's say, on your employer. Today, and especially the younger generations, they need to have a sense of purpose. They need to understand that, this employer doesn't violate their values, their value system, their beliefs, their core. Imagine to be, I don't know, just giving an example, a vegetarian, and to work, for a company that produces meat. It cannot really work because it's really, there are two polarized values, right? The one which is, being vegetarian, all about animals, animal welfare and so on. The other one is about killing animals. Okay, I'm going now a bit to the extreme, but I think you get the point, right? So I think it was Voltaire, if I'm not mistaken, who said once that the person who doesn't have the spirit of the age, of the era that lives in, has all the misery of it. And it's so true, because you can still see, people from a different generation hooking up to this, old school management style, which is understandable in a way, because this is what they have been told, what they have been learned, and how they have been molded professionally. And here comes, I think, what we were saying before. How smart are you to change the landscape? How agile you are in order to safeguard that you will still be part of it. And if you are part of it, you can still lead the change. So you need to decide from which side you want to be.
I have a really nice way to put it, what I think the modern leadership is all about. And I, by the way, do believe that anybody can do it, because if there is a will, there is a way.
Absolutely.
Gandhi, and I think he knows quite a bit about people, right? He said that your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions, they become your habits, they become your values, and finally, your values become your destiny. But what is really interesting is that there is so much things to do before the values, and it starts from the beliefs. So at the end of the day, the human-centered leadership is all about talking about the beliefs and talking and acting accordingly.
I think it's, again, as simple as to change your lenses, and see it through a different lens, through a more empathetic lens. Try to put people always at first, because you cannot execute.
And it's not either or.
No,
I mean
it's
that
not.
I'm focusing on people, hence I'm not focusing on the other stuff.
Absolutely, and we need to run the business. Again, we
Yeah.
need to keep the balance here, right? But this has been imbalanced over the last year with the old school, industrial management style that you used before. So, I mean,
what can you say? Go for it.
You have to go for it,
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will not be relevant anymore, And we as humans, you know, we have that ego, you know, that we are the best. I'm never wrong. We discussed about that before. Sometimes it takes more guts, you know, to say, listen, you know, what I'm doing is not really serving me. It's not serving the organization
Or the people around
or
me.
the people around me. Then I need to change it. It's more egoistic, in my views, not to change because you think that you are always, you know, right and always on top of things. Not really. It's smarter, I think, to embrace what's happening in the environment around you and try to adjust yourself of the conditions of the environment you live in. And COVID was a perfect example of how companies has really changed. I mean, a few years back, it was all about, you know, being present to the office, working late to show that to your manager, to your colleagues, or to whoever was around, you know, that you are a hard working. It doesn't make you effective. I can tell you from personal experience, it doesn't make you effective at all. The contrary. Once you respect people, once you give the space and the freedom to people to be themselves, there will always be a positive outcome.
It was absolutely a pleasure.
It was
to have
absolutely
you
a
here.
pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah.
And thank you for flying all the way over.
Oh, well, it was a pleasure. Like, you know,
meet me.
change is good.
Always.
Always. Theo, thank you.
Thank you so much. Really
It was a
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Same here.